Hi, I'm Colin Dunn. I served a career in the United States Army and had plenty of opportunities to see resilience displayed well and not so well. On one occasion, I wore this construction helmet. I was working with the New York and New Jersey Port Authority in March of 2002. On the side, you can see the picture of the Twin Towers because that was 6 months after the attack on the World Trade Center. I saw in the faces of the men and women who wore these helmets such determination and drive like I'll never forget. I also saw the same kind of determination and drive in the faces of the people who were working to rebuild the Pentagon. I witnessed a roll call down there, at the end of which somebody picked up a bullhorn and said, "Let's roll!" And roll they did. They finished the rebuild of the Pentagon 3 months earlier than it was scheduled to finish. They called the project the Phoenix Project because the destroyed wing of the Pentagon rose again from the ashes. If resilience is coming through a tough time and coming out better on the other side, if resilience is bouncing back, I don't know a better example than those workers that I saw in New York and at the Pentagon. What is resilience? And what does it look like? How do we build it? Well, that's what this workshop is all about. We're going to go through the ABCDs of building resilience. The A is adjust your perspective. The B is be a balloon, not a ball and chain. The C is connecting with others. And the D is disengage and recharge. Let's start with the A, adjust your perspective. Perspective is key because perspective drives your attitude. And attitude is key to resilience. I remember a few years ago, it was unseasonably warm after Christmas, and I came down the stairs with a skip in my step. Why? Because I was going to take down the Christmas lights that day, and I don't like working in the cold weather. My son, however, came shortly after me, clomping down the stairs with an attitude. I asked him, "What's wrong? What's got you down?" He says, "Well, I was going to go snowboarding, but I guess I'm not because the weather's too warm." You see, his perspective drove his attitude, just the way my perspective drove mine. William James, the father of American psychiatry, said, "The greatest discovery in any generation is the discovery that people can adjust their lives by adjusting their attitude." The first thing I want to talk about is determine your circle of influence and your circle of concern. Well, what is that? Well, let's go over to the flip chart here and talk about it. Your circle of concern is everything in your life you're concerned about. Your circle of influence is within that circle, and those are the things you're concerned about, but you can change. Take, for example, you're in traffic and you're stuck. It's a parking lot, but you're supposed to get to an appointment in a few minutes. You're going to be way late. The fact that you're in a traffic jam is in your circle of concern. You can't change that, right? All you can change is how you respond to the traffic in front of you. You can get all angry about it, or you can let it go. Here's the thing I want you to remember. In your circle of concern of those things, you cannot change. Understand that. There's a saying that goes like this: grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. What's most important about that, this whole diagram here is this. Think about it. Most of the anger, unhappiness, and angst, and anxiety, and dissatisfaction in your life comes from trying to operate in your circle of concern. Try this exercise when you're faced with some trauma or something you need to recover from. Take out a piece of paper and draw a line right down the middle. On one side, list all the things about that situation you cannot control, you cannot affect or fix. On the other side, list all the things you can fix, things you can change. The secret then is to let go of the stuff cannot affect, you can't change, and to act on the list on the other side. Next, let's go with practicing perspective taking. What is perspective taking? That's just looking at things from the perspective of other people. Not too long ago, I was riding with a colleague. I was a passenger and she was the driver, and we were driving around the Beltway in Washington, D.C., which some of you may know is quite an experience at times. All of a sudden, a car pulled out right in front of us and made her slam on the brakes and then sped away after almost causing this accident. I looked over at the driver. I wanted to see how she would react. She just looked straight ahead and shook her head and said, "That poor man, he's just heard that his wife has had a heart attack and she's in the hospital and he's rushing to meet her." I turned to my colleague and I said, "Did you really know that guy?" She said, "No, I didn't know him, but whenever something like that happens to me, I make up a story about the other person, looking at it from their perspective. It helps me handle situations better." Practice perspective taking. Resilient people are adept at looking at things from other people's perspective. Thirdly, hunt the good stuff. Look at the things in your life that are important, that are good. Even in the midst of trauma, you still have some blessings to the side. Count them, notice them, focus on them, and it'll help you get through the situation you're wrestling with. The next letter we want to talk about is be a balloon, not a ball and chain. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, if you look at the slide, be more like Tigger and less like Eeyore. Be the kind of person that's upbeat, even in the midst of your circumstances. Because if you're that kind of person, around others, it will help you get through the situation you're wrestling with. One thing you can do is appreciate positive experiences as they occur to you. You know, when we're going through a tough time, it's hard to notice the positive things that happen to us, the experiences that we have. But the studies show that on a ratio of about 3 to 1, we experience 3 more positive experiences for every negative experience we run into. We just have to notice them and pay attention to them. We need to be an optimist. We need to look for the silver lining around whatever cloud is hanging over our head. Resilient people are good at that. The second thing I want you to focus on is consider your strengths. If you're going through a tough time right now, there's a good chance that you've been through a tough time before this particular one. This is not the first tough thing you've had to endure. If that's the case, think back to that last one that you went through, the one that you somehow got through. What strengths within yourself did you draw upon to get through that particular issue? Do a little self-talk and see if you can use those same strengths in some way to get you through the current one. The last thing I want to talk about is just laughing. Just tickle your funny bone. Norm Cousins, editor of the Saturday Evening Post, had a debilitating disease. It almost killed him. He nursed himself back to health. How did he do it? He rented movies from the Three Stooges series or Groucho Marx, and he laughed his way back to health. He wrote a book about it, if you're interested. It's called Anatomy of an Illness. Laughing helps work our way through resilience because it reduces tension to moderate levels. I know a woman who's in chronic pain. Some days are good, some days aren't so good. And she told me, you know, when the days are really bad, sometimes the best thing for me to do is just stop and laugh at the pain. It helps me work my way through it. And that brings us to the C, connect with others. Your relationships with others can help you. Your network and your web of relationships can also be kind of a safety net to catch you as you're falling through tough times. Do you have a 4 a.m. friend? Do you have somebody that you could call at 3 or 4 in the morning and they would answer and listen to you, or maybe meet you somewhere to talk? If the answer to that question is yes, studies show you have a chance of being more resilient than other people who might say no. How do you develop such friendships? The next bullet describes it. Maybe your mother gave you this some years ago. To make a friend, be a friend. Reach out to people. Talk to somebody at work you haven't talked to a whole lot. Wave to a neighbor when you go home. Leave an apple for the mailman. Reach out to people. Here's a tip. Find an elderly person in your neighborhood and ask them if you can help them with some tasks. You know, showing empathy for someone else releases dopamine in your brain and makes you feel better. Plus, you have the added advantage that if you're worried about and concerned about somebody else's issue, you're less fixated on your own. The last thing I want to give you is find a support group. There's support groups out there for almost everything, and finding a group of people who've gone through a similar situation to you can be extremely helpful. If, for one thing, you'll find out you're not alone. There are other people who are going through what you're going through. And that brings us to D, disengage and recharge. On the screen here, you see a picture of a young John McEnroe, a famous tennis player some years ago. John McEnroe had a habit, and that was in the middle of a match, in the middle of playing a game, he would call a kind of a timeout and step back off of the court, and he would fiddle with the strings on his racket. And then, after a few seconds, he would step back on the court and re-engage. Was John McEnroe was he really fixing the strings to make the racket a better racket? No, he wasn't doing that. What was he doing? He was disengaging from the contest at hand, thinking about it for a few seconds, recharging, and entering back into the fray. We all need to do that. How can you do that? Well, here's a tip. Extend the vacation. You ever had one of those vacations you came back from where you were really rested? You felt like you could engage back at work. You just felt good about yourself and you're ready to go again? Now, I'm not talking about those vacations which you may have had where you come back and you need a vacation to recover from the vacation. I'm talking about those where you really feel rested. Well, think about this. What did you do during that vacation that gave you that feeling of rest? Was it that you read some books? Was it that you took long walks? Were there certain people you hung out, or certain activities that you did? Well, here's the tip. Extend the vacation. If those behaviors in that vacation helped you feel engaged again, you can do the same thing when you're back at work. It may have to wait till the weekend. You might be able to do them during the week, but find out what those activities are and weave them back into your life. Second bullet is learn to relax, or for some of us, relearn to relax. Maybe you've heard of some relaxation techniques like take a deep breath in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. You do that 5 times and you're going to feel better. The same is true. One of my favorites is the slow neck roll. That's where you just let your head hang loose and roll slowly around your head. You're supposed to do that 5 times, but even doing it 1 time's helped me just now. Find a relaxation technique that works for you. Go get a computer, go into Dr. Google and type in relaxation techniques. You'll get lots of ideas. And that is the ABCDs of building resilience. Do you mind if we just go over them one more time? The A is adjust your perspective. Maybe looking long range instead of short range. Maybe looking at the situation from another person's perspective. The B is be a balloon, not a ball and chain. Try to have a positive attitude. Colin Powell said that perpetual optimism is a force multiplier, and that applies in building resilience as well. Connect with others is what the C is all about, and that safety net of relationships can be a lifesaver for you. D is disengage. and recharge. You got to pull off the cord every now and again and re-engage after a certain period of time. Ernest Hemingway said this, "The world breaks everyone, and afterward, many are strong at the broken places." My hope is that for those of you who have watched this video, you have an opportunity now to be stronger as a result of the ABCDs. Before I let you go, I want to show you some great further reading. If you're interested, Travis Bradberry's book on emotional intelligence is the best one I've ever seen. Plus, you can evaluate your own emotional intelligence with an enclosed personal assessment. Joe Caruso's book on the power of losing control is an emotional roller coaster of a book, and I think will take you down a place where you'll understand how important it is to build that resilience. And Viktor Frankl wrote a book, which is the only book that talks about the psychological aspects of building resilience in the middle of being in a Nazi concentration camp. Those are the resources I recommend you explore if you want to. Thanks for watching.